I've started looking into the format for the European Championship. Not like in depth yet, but I've started taking some looks at, like, for example, the Ritual Beast deck. I've started to familiarize with myself with what the deck does. I've started looking into stuff like White Woods, the Fiendsmith stuff, that sort of thing, right? Yubel is another deck that I've started looking into a little bit, right? The only reason why I haven't been as productive with that sort of stuff is simply because, is it actually like relevant? Am I wasting my time when Snake Eyes is still basically at full power? Am I really gonna play Ritual Beast at the European Championship? Am I really gonna be able to play White Woods if Snake Eyes is a thing? You know, like that sort of stuff. I think the reality is somewhere in between. It's not a waste of time to learn these new archetypes. Even if I might not end up playing them myself, there still is a very real chance that you play against it in these tournaments, so you still need to familiarize yourself with it. And then, even if we don't get a ban list before the European Championship or NAWCQ, we will still get one eventually. So I just wanted to go over the situation that I am in right now with Infinite Forbidden preparation and Battles of Legends preparation. My first impression on these kind of decks, which ones I think are going to be able to make a splash in the format, and also, most importantly, I guess, because this is my first impression, so take it with a grain of salt. If you believe in any of these decks that I personally don't believe in, feel free to still go ahead and test them. You know, I don't want to discourage anyone from trying out that stuff. I basically just want to give you guys an update on where I am at with my preparation for the Continental Championships, right? What I want to test next, what I think or hope some of these decks can do, which decks I believe in and which decks I don't really believe in, even without having played them for a lot. So that sort of thing, right? I have the Battles of Legends set open right here. Quick summary of what I think. Phantom of Yubel is 100% the most relevant card out of Battles of Legends. I don't think that's a hot take. That thing is going for like 60 bucks right now. Out of all of the new contenders, I think Yubel is the most likely, or calling it Yubel is not even really the right way to phrase it. I think it's more like a Fiend Link deck, because it's going to play a lot of different Fiend engines. It's like Fiend good stuff. It almost feels like Dragon Link, but with Fiends. So like Fiend Link is almost the right name to call it. If you're looking for a meta threat that is not Snake Eyes, I think Yubel or Fiend Link is your best bet. Obviously, though, we're talking a deck that is once again gonna cost you a very good chunk of money, because Phantom of Yubel is a 2 to 3 of. Fiendsmith is a confirmed secret rare already, and Nightmare Throne, you already know how expensive that card is at the moment. So this deck is expensive because people are aware that it is probably the most likely meta contender. The other things from this set that I think matter, the toy cards and the ice barrier cards, as their own deck, they're not going to see play, but they are good engines in other decks. I think there is a solid chance that you can make an ice barrier runic deck or a White Woods with the toy cards kind of thing, and that could be meta relevant, even though those are the kind of decks I mean when I say those are more likely to succeed once they actually hit Snake Eyes, right? I'd have to try them more myself to confirm that suspicion that I have. And then out of the newly introduced archetypes, the only one that's really, I don't want to say worth testing, because the other ones are probably still worth testing, but the only one that I think has a real chance of breaking into the meta is Ritual Beast. The concept behind Ritual Beast is you have a couple of 1-card combos, you have a couple of 2-card combos, and the deck has decent amount of non-engine, which in the current format basically just means the deck can play a bunch of hand traps, right? Which at first glance, that just seems like any other tier 2 deck at the moment, right? The thing that sets Ritual Beast apart is the fact that it can obviously main deck Dimension Shifter. Dimension Shifter not only works with the deck, but I think some combos even get better if you have Dimension Shifter. In that sense, because Shifter is still at 3 for some reason, that makes me think Ritual Beast can be meta relevant. In terms of all the other decks in here, I do think that they are not going to be good enough to compete at the Continental Championships. So just quick summary, Battles of Legends, Yubel matters, Ritual Beast maybe matters, and the toy cards potentially matter with White Woods. That's what I'm going to focus on with my personal preparation for the Continental Championships, right? Those are the kind of things that I want to look at first to see their true potential. And then the Infinite Forbidden is obviously a little bit of a bigger set with more new cards, a new main set with more notable stuff. The most notable, from my impression, is absolutely going to be Fiendsmith. A relatively, I want to say, small archetype. If you're looking at the current OCG situation, I think it's to be expected that the Fiendsmith cards are gonna be completely cracked, and I'm gonna explain to the best of my ability what you do with these cards. The Fiendsmith main deck monster, which is called Fiendsmith Engraver, you can discard this card, add a Fiendsmith spell trap from your deck to your hand. You can target a Fiendsmith equip card you control and a monster on the field, send them to the graveyard. If this card is in your grave, you can shuffle one other light fiend from graveyard into deck extra deck, special summon this card. Can only use each effect once per turn. So this card is obviously completely insane. The card that you always search with this is Fiendsmith Track This. Add one light fiend monster from your deck to your hand, then discard one card. You can banish this card from your graveyard, fusion summon a Fiendsmith Fusion from your extra deck using monsters from hand or field as material. So people are playing more than one copy of this, even though it is once per turn. It is significantly better to start with Fiendsmith Engraver in your hand than hard drawing this one. Even though this can search the Engraver, it is better to start with the Engraver itself. And the card that everyone is playing for this, which I think may have already been getting more expensive, it's Fabled Lurry, an old Fabled card that says if this card is discarded to the graveyard, special summon it. Simple as that. It's a level 1 fiend. Monsters your opponent controls lose 600 attack. You can only use each of the following effects of Fiendsmith Lacrimosa once per turn. If this card is fusion summoned, you can target a light fiend monster in your grave or banishment, add it to your hand or special summon it. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can shuffle another light fiend from your grave into deck or extra deck, inflict 1200 damage to your opponent. And then they have a Link 1. We love those. Needs a light fiend. You can only special summon Requiem once per turn. During the main phase, quick effect, you contribute this card, special summon a Fiendsmith from hand or deck, target a non-link fiend monster you control, equip this card from field or graveyard to that target as an equip spell that gives it 600 attack. You can only use that once per turn. And then we have Link 2, 2 monsters including a light fiend. During your main phase, you can fusion summon a fiend fusion from your extra deck by shuffling materials mentioned on it from your graveyard into the deck. You can target a non-link light fiend monster you control, equip this card from field or grave to that card. Let me see if I can do the combo from the top of my head from what I've seen. So you start with Fiendsmith Engraver. You discard it. You add Fiendsmith Track This. You activate Fiendsmith Track This to add Fabled Lurry from your deck to your hand and discard it immediately, which then special summons the Fabled Lurry. Then you can link the Fabled Lurry, because it's a light fiend, into Fiendsmith Requiem, which you would then tribute to summon a Fiendsmith from your deck, and then you summon back Engraver from the graveyard by shuffling the Lurry back into the deck, and then you make Sequentia with the 2 Fiendsmiths, which then lets you fusion summon a Fiend Fusion from extra deck by shuffling the materials into the deck. So you shuffle 2 from the graveyard back to summon Fiendsmith Lacrimosa, which then says if this card is fusion summoned, target a light fiend Engraver banishment and special summon it. So at that point, you just have to make sure you keep 1 Engraver in the grave. So you bring it back with this, you have 2 level 6 on the board, and then you can do different stuff depending on what your hand is, right? You can make DDD, Wave King, High Caesar, whatever it's called, the one that you all know from Unchained, because that's 2 fiends. You can make Appaloosa if you already have combo. You can make Beatrice if you still need combo, all that kind of stuff. For example, the reason why Snake Eyes is using those cards is because if you don't open any Snake Eye cards, you can, in that situation, theoretically go for Beatrice, send Snake Eye Ash, the Link 2 plus the Beatrice can make Promethean Princess to bring back the Snake Eye Ash, and suddenly you've turned this card into a Snake Eye Ash plus Promethean Princess without using your normal summon. It's so broken because if you already have combo, you just make Appaloosa, and if you don't have combo, you get combo without normal summon. And for some reason, which one is it? This guy just does burn damage as well. If all this wasn't enough, you also have a time win condition now if you go through the Fiendsmith combo. So no matter what deck you're playing, you're gonna have to be familiar with these cards. They are absolutely nuts. And honestly, I think the design on this archetype is pretty bad. You guys know how I feel about 1-card combos that accomplish too much. This is not only a 1-card combo, but it is also something that you can splash in basically any deck, because there is no deck out there pretty much that does not appreciate the ability to make an Appaloosa without a normal summon, or Beatrice or Caesar. These cards, as soon as they come out, are gonna be meta staples. They're gonna make hand trapping these sort of decks so much harder. For example, the Snake Eye deck already has normal summon, bonfire, wanted as like choke points. Now you add a whole nother layer to it, which is the Fiendsmith cards, which can also be extenders or starters or Appaloosa to protect your other cards, right? And so if you thought the Fiendsmith cards would get rid of Snake Eye in the format or would rival Snake Eyes, I unironically think Snake Eyes is one of the decks that benefits the most from these cards. It's absolutely nuts. nuts. Like the whole approach that people are doing right now with like trying to hand trap Snake Eyes, I don't think it works anymore. Right now, if we don't get a ban list until Continentals, we have 3 Bonfire, 3 Wanted, 3 Witch, 3 Ash, and the full Fiendsmith package. You can't hand trap that deck. On average, you need like 7 hand traps to stop that shit. Droll gets better, but like the one-on-one hand traps that people are doing at the moment is not gonna work because they just have too many extenders to even realistically break that. You open 2 Imperm and Ash and they probably play through it. And this is the reason why I've kind of been procrastinating on starting to test for Euros and stuff like that, because there are cool things in this set, which we're gonna talk about in a moment, but I feel like it's all overshadowed by the Fiendsmith cards, right? The Fiendsmith cards are so powerful that I think everything else in this set, unfortunately, hardly matters, which is a shame because there is cool stuff in here. This is why in my recent ban list discussion, I said hitting cards like Bonfire or Ash or Wanted is not gonna do the job for Snake Eyes, because guess what? Even if they limit Snake Eye Ash and Wanted, which is I think what they did in the OCG, you just replace them with Fiendsmith cards. The deck doesn't lose any consistency. It's not gonna stop. The deck already has like 15 one-card combos and it's gonna get more. Beatrice hit when? And see, this is genuinely why I was confused. One of the main complaints in the OCG ban list reaction that one OCG player uploaded was the fact that they didn't hit the Fiendsmith cards at all. They're new, yeah, but like the thing is, banning Beatrice wouldn't even matter that much because yes, Beatrice is really good in that combo, but if you pay attention to the combo, it's still insane. You still get an Appaloosa without your normal summon for 1 card. It's a 3 material Appaloosa. If you want to play through Nibiru, you can make the DDD rank 6 still, even if they banned Beatrice. You can make Evolzar Lars. What one Fiendsmith does is still nuts and probably still way too powerful if they banned Beatrice. But the things they are doing with Beatrice in the OCG right now is absolutely out of control. Removing Beatrice would really only hurt the ability to do multiple things with the Fiendsmith card, right? Like right now, when you open Fiendsmith Engraver, you have the choice. If, for example, you're playing Snake Eyes, right? Do I need it as a starter? Do I want it to make Appaloosa? Do I maybe want to make Caesar? Or do I maybe want to like hold it in hand? If they hand trap you, you use it as an extender or something like that, right? If they banned Beatrice, you would just basically lose one of those options, which would be the starter option. You can't use it as a starter. But unironically, if your hand is 1 Fiendsmith and 4 non-engine, you can still get carried by it, right? You make like a whatever 1-card combo, like end on Caesar and something else, 4 hand traps, like that's fine. My problem with this is basically just I've voiced my concerns with 1-card combos doing too much. I think some 1-card combos are fine. I think there is a level to a 1-card combo that I'm willing to accept at this point in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, because it is just part of it. Modern Yu-Gi-Oh cards just do a lot of things. That's fine. But I think there's a line. I think there's a difference between like normal summoning a Life Twin or normal summoning a Marincess monster, or maybe even activating first movement solo in a pure Melodious deck, right? They're okay. They're doing a little bit, you know, but they are like mostly limiting you into your own archetype. They don't end on too much. And there's definitely a difference between the cards that I just mentioned and Snake Eye Ash and Fiendsmith Engraver. Do we agree that there's a difference between those? In this context, right? The worst part about all of that is the fact that these even pair together. How crazy is it that the most powerful normal summon in the game at the moment, which is Snake Eye Ash, pairs together with no problem with probably the best special summon 1-card combo in the game from Infinite Forbidden on, which is Fiendsmith Engraver? Why do these go together? Why do they have perfect synergy almost? Why can I use Fiendsmith Engraver to access Snake Eye Ash if I don't have it? Why can I use Fiendsmith Engraver to push through my Snake Eye Ash if I already have it? Why can I use Fiendsmith Engraver as an extender if my Snake Eye Ash gets impermed or whatever? Like, have we not learned anything? Like, come on, man. The most frustrating part to me about this entire thing is the fact that I genuinely do think there is a lot of other stuff in the game right now that's really cool. And also a lot of the stuff that is releasing with the Infinite Forbidden is cool if it wasn't for Snake Eye and Fiendsmith, which is frustrating to me. I know that was probably cope, but I was low-key hoping that they would give the Fiendsmith cards the Super Heavy Samurai treatment. Just print them as commons because they're gonna like ban them soon. But now that they've announced Fiendsmith Engraver as a secret rare, so that's not happening. It definitely was Copium. Maybe we're getting a new ban list right after the release of info. I do not know if there are any other important events. I obviously don't know when and if we're gonna get a ban list, but I think it would be a good decision to do it. Sometimes what they've been doing is we're just gonna wait until a new set releases. We're just not gonna drop a ban list. We're gonna let the new set like regulate the format on its own, which honestly sometimes has worked better than I would have expected. In the case of Infinite Forbidden, I don't think that's gonna work. The one positive thing, in my opinion, about this entire situation, like I said earlier, I do not think this whole Imperm, Effect Veiler, Mourner, Ghost Ogre, Ash Blossom, like 18 hand trap ass approach, that works anymore after Fiendsmith releases. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like the Fiendsmith cards just make the deck so resilient to hand traps that you simply can't play that approach anymore. I think Droll is going to be a more powerful main deck card for sure, but I think that in general makes it like more realistic that we're gonna have to play like board breakers, right? Because the deck gets a lot more main deck tools. It doesn't get that many extra end board pieces, you know, like you still are gonna end on like Appaloosa plus Masquerena. Maybe you add a rank 6 into the mix with the Fiendsmith cards, but like a Dark Ruler or something like that could still handle it. And in my opinion, a board breaker Snake Eye format, I think it's less toxic than the hand trap version of the format. They can end on the Fiendsmith Omni. They have an Omni? Oh my god, dude. Can we just delete Fiendsmith? Is this the Omni? Okay, sick. Well, but Dark Ruler and Droplet still work, yeah. That's another thing worth mentioning. This card, Moon Goddess of the Closed Sky, is a Link 2 V-Jump promo. The effect of this card, I think, is mostly irrelevant, but what matters here is that it's a generic Light Fiend Link 2, which we don't have at the moment. And the reason why that matters is because that means you can turn any 2 monsters into this, and then this, because it's a Light Fiend, turns into the Fiendsmith Link 1, which gets you into your Fiendsmith combos, even if you don't draw any of your Fiendsmith. I hate to be the one to say it. I'm hoping this card doesn't come out in Infinite Forbidden, but it is very likely. Like from their standpoint, it just makes so much sense to throw this card in there. If it's ever gonna sell, it would be now. Like this is the best point to print the card. What the hell? Why is there a Majesty's Fiend? Oh my god, I hate the more I learn about Fiendsmith, the more I just wish we could skip the Infinite Forbidden, dude. Like, come on, man. I thought Snake Eyes was badly designed. What the hell is Fiendsmith, man? Okay, that was my Fiendsmith rant. There's other cool archetypes in the Infinite Forbidden that I do want to take a look at in testing soon. For example, Whitewoods. Powerful, but not too powerful, I feel like, and has a lot of cool synergies with different decks. There's been Whitewoods runic variations, which I'm obviously hyped for. There's Whitewoods, I think, Centurion. You can also play somewhat, I think, pure Whitewoods with like the toy box cards. So the whole gimmick of the deck is that their monsters have effects where you send spell traps from hand or field to the graveyard as cost to activate their effects. And then they have synergies with that. Like, for example, I'm pretty sure all the Whitewoods spell traps, if I remember correctly, they all have an activation effect, but they also have, if this card is sent to the graveyard to activate a monster effect, you can set this card. They reset themselves when you use them as cost, so you can like use them once per turn for free. And this also is not limited to Whitewoods cards. For example, you can discard this for Hugin and then it comes back. There's a lot of cool stuff because they also have tuners and a lot of different possible interactions. Like, for example, Esteria, which I think is the best starter of the deck. You can send a spell trap from hand or field to the graveyard, special summon a light spellcaster tuner from your deck. It can tutor the Whitewoods tuner. It can also tutor something like Quem or Cartesia or whatever. The deck actually doesn't have any crazy sort of 1-card combos. It's just a lot of like combo potential with like 2 to 3-card combos, and it has a very grindy playstyle, I feel like. They all have cool graveyard recursion effects like this one. If a spell trap is sent to your grave to activate a monster effect, while this card is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card. Yeah, this is the other main deck non-tuner. If a light spellcaster tuner is special summoned to your field during your opponent's turn, while this card's in your graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. So this deck does a lot of, I think, synchro summoning on your opponent's turn. So those are the two like engine main deck monsters, and then they got two level 4 tuners. I don't actually know which one you play and how often. Obviously, two really good effects on this one. That's a really good tuner. That's basically a tuner that you summon it on your own turn. You get the search, you synchro it off, and then you synchro climb. Like you put the synchro that you make with this into the graveyard so that this one returns from the graveyard again. So it's basically two tuners in one, which is obviously really good in a lot of different combo decks, but especially also in the runic decks. That's basically what they would try to do all the time. And then we've got the other tuner, which is just an extender from hand. I think this one is not a starter, so you don't play multiples of this. They've got some spell traps. I think the trap card is what lets you synchro on the opponent's turn, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so this is basically all of the Whitewood spell traps are free discard fodder for all of the Whitewoods and Hugin, and they provide like some interruption on the opponent's turn with this card because they do have a synchro. I think it's this one, which is a Book of Eclipse that doesn't miss timing. So even if you chain the trap to something, you can still book. And this is also a tuner, which means that it triggers this one, right? If a light spellcaster tuner is special summoned during your opponent's turn, you can add this to your hand. They also got a good synchro to make on your own turn any Whitewoods card or any light spellcaster from your deck to your hand, so they can search like Effect Mailer if they play it. I just don't remember what the big synchro does, but I think it's also really good. This one summons Formula Synchron from your extra deck on the opponent's turn to go into like a level 10 synchro. So if you like end on this, it's pretty good. Does this need to be synchro summon? No, you can also summon this to book. You definitely play the trap and you definitely play the legend. I'm not sure if you play Beware. And that's Whitewoods already. Pretty small archetype, but it's a really, really strong engine in my opinion that I would normally be really, really hyped for. Unironically, these cards look super dope. I said this for the first time already when I read them. I already thought they looked super cool and interesting to play with. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't know if I'm seeing it. Because no matter how cool all of this sounds and how good all of this sounds, it doesn't sound better than what Snake Eyes and Fiendsmith cards do, which is annoying. I'm gonna try them for Euros. I think it's more likely for this to be good after Snake Eye gets something. Tenpai is getting pretty strong support as well. It's crazy to think that this is only the second wave of Tenpais because the deck is already so strong. You wouldn't believe it's only gotten one wave so far. They're getting Tenpai Dragon of Genroku. So it's basically a combination of Poplar and Lone Fire Blossom, which is pretty powerful. So needless to say that this is going to be insane for Tenpai Dragon decks. And they also get this little guy, which you might think is a little gimmicky, but they actually do play this in the OCG at like 1 or 2 copies usually, which is a little Fire Dragon guy. It's basically just a little Stratos for Tenpai. It has the perfect level because it's a level 3 non-tuner, and it can get you this guy, which then special summons itself. So the one thing that Tenpai is missing at the moment, which is a little bit of consistency and the right starter cards, is what they are getting in the Infinite Forbidden. I know there is more stuff that could be worth talking about in this set, but in terms of meta relevancy for the EU WCQ and the NA WCQ, I think that's it. I think Fiendsmith pushes a lot of these cards that are normally fine Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I'm not saying all of this stuff is bad, but in terms of new archetypes, I don't see them performing in this environment. Like, I don't think Gimmick Puppet is going to be a thing for us. And then obviously there's Mulcharmy Purulia, which I think that's a whole separate discussion. Long story short, I think Mulcharmy, which is what it's called, Mulcharmy Purulia, I personally think it's going to be a side deck card, which I think is completely fine in terms of its power level. The fact that you need to control no cards basically means you either have to side deck this card or it's going to be very risky, right? If you main deck it and you go first and it's in your hand, it's not doing anything. I think that's it from the Infinite Forbidden. That is how gatekeeping I think Fiendsmith and Snake Eyes are at the moment. If there's gonna be a big ban list addressing Snake Eye and maybe Beatrice or something like that, yes, we'll talk about Gimmick Puppets. We can talk about the new Memento combos and stuff like that. But like, let's be real here. Memento is not better than Snake Eyes, and Fiendsmith is not happening. Like, I gotta be real with you guys. From a competitive perspective, I think if you're like testing Memento for the NAWCQ, I think it's a waste of time. If you like the deck, you can play it, but that deck has like no chance being better than tier 3 or tier 2. The power level of Fiendsmith and Snake Eye is just too much, is the reality of the situation.